Good evening. Welcome to the Council of the Whole meeting in the PRP room, Jacob Edwards Library, Wednesday, August 28th at 7 p.m. First agenda item is calling the meeting to order, and it's not on our agenda. It's just a typo, but we will be doing the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag, so please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Roll call, please.
Councilor Kraskow? Present. Councilor Clemens? Present. Councilor Langevin?
Present.
Councilor Manna?
Present.
Councilor Marcucci? Present. Councilor Moriarty? Present. Councilor Nicola? Present. Councilor Peliquin? Present. Councilor Vandal? Present. 9 present.
Thank you. Agenda item number 3 is Citizens Forum. Any citizens would like to speak on anything that is not on the agenda tonight, please come forward. Any citizens would like to speak on something that's not on the agenda tonight, please come forward. Seeing none, we're going to move on to agenda number 4, discussion of the police audit provided by the town of Southbridge by Ernest Horn, municipal consultant of New England. This is basically a continuation. Now that the public all seen the documentation, they had an opportunity to look over the documentation and stuff like that. So I'm sure there might be some councilors that have some questions, and if there's any citizens, I would like to give the councilors the first opportunity and then open it up if any citizens have questions. I do want to remind everyone, though, we will not be discussing any personnel matters. Personnel matters must go through executive session, so just keep that in mind. And that's just really for the safety of the employee or employer, or for possible litigations down the road. So I just like to say that right up front so everyone knows where we're going. So other than that, I'm looking forward to having a respectful meeting and move forward. So I will open it up to Mr. Horn. If you'd like.
Good evening, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us back again. We'd be happy to answer any questions. We do want to do a little housekeeping at some point, but first we can certainly answer any questions that there might be from the council or anyone else.
Any councilors have any questions at this time? Councilman Manna?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Can you hear me okay? The microphone isn't coming up. I was not here for the August 5th meeting, and I do have, I was able to read over the report, and I do have a concern. It starts on page 11 and ends on page 16. It's the comments made by the personnel. These were supposed to be done anonymously, and although you didn't put any names to the comments that were made by the personnel in the police department, it still concerns me that now that this documentation is public, that people, especially people within the department, can kind of tell who said what. And that really concerns me on that. And also, where it says on page 41, number 9, it talks about the town manager needing to support the police chief on money and vehicles and whatnot, department needs for the police department. I can honestly say that I've been to many subcommittee meetings where the town manager and the chief of police have brought forward to subcommittee for vehicles for the police department, personnel for the police department, and I have seen a lot of these items at times shot down for budgetary reasons, or they could have been for other reasons as well. So that was my comment on that. Thank you.
So on the staff comments, I can't begin to tell you what people might think as far as who said what. Those are anonymous comments taken from the voluminous amount of comments that we got. I can't begin to predict what someone might think someone had said. On page 41, recommendation number 9, yes, we do want to see the town manager support the chief's needs. It's been a very lean budget. A couple of times the manager's told the chief to make cuts. We have the documentation from the chief on that. And certainly, we understand that the town manager has a dual role, if you will, to support the needs of the department, at the same time maintain an efficient overall budget. We do understand he can't say yes to everyone, but we want to make sure that he recognizes the needs to support the police department.
Thank you. I do have one
Go
more
ahead,
thing I'd
Counselor.
like to add. And also going through this, I did recognize the needs that were put out there for more personnel in the police department, and I also have seen this over the years. So I do hope that we as a council can get together and go over this line item by line item, what they're recommended and whatnot, and see what we can do with the budget to get some of the things that they do recommend.
Remember that we sit in an unusual position. We don't have to find the money. We simply tell you what you need. That's really, honestly, kind of the easiest part of the job. It is difficult for the town to try to find ways to fund different things at different times, so we recognize that.
Thank you.
Town Manager.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just wish to acknowledge that administration has gone through the report. We have gone through the findings. I organized a meeting with the chief and the finance director. We are in the process of putting together a response to each of the items, as we would do with any audit that was done on any type of town operation. And it is my intent to submit that to council. We hopefully will have the comments done by the end of this week. So we'll try to have it in the packages for next week. And then whatever the council wants to do. I mean, this is kind of standard protocol that if we have an audit done, we go through, and usually it's done in the management letter. So here we'll basically do the same thing. And to the question of additional personnel and staffing, we will have some comments on what we think. I mean, certainly we do agree with the civilian dispatch, and we do agree with the adding of additional personnel. How to do that in a fiscally responsible way that doesn't blow up the budget is obviously going to be the trick to getting that done. So that's something that we will look at. So some of the answers are going to be things that we could do instantly. Some of them are going to be things that are more longer-term project.
Anyone else? Council Marcucci?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm glad to hear Mr. Clark make that statement, because initially when we were submitted the letter of concern from members of the police department, it was our understanding as a council that there were no issues at the police department. And that's why we were attempting to move forward, and that's why we requested the audit specifically to what you answered. Some of us might not like some of your answers, but you were specific to our concerns and the issues that were brought forward by members of the police department. Mr. Horn, you had made a statement that you had a little bit of housekeeping to do, and I'm interested in what you mean by that, and if you could explain yourself before I go with
Sure.
further questions.
I guess first I'd like to ask you a question on, when you said that you received the letter from the union, you were told that there were no issues in the police department by the union?
No, by the town manager.
Okay.
And the police chief.
Okay. All right, I understand that. Housekeeping issues, what always happens is when you can't defeat what's placed in front of you, you attack the messenger. And I discussed that at the last meeting. And there's been a little bit of that going around, so we want to clarify a couple of things where people are trying to misquote us. One of the things that I've heard now from two different sources is that we got it wrong on your radio system, that you, in fact, have a voting system. I never said you didn't have a voting system. I said, in order for you to have an efficient radio system in this town, you need a simulcast system. Basic passive voting systems, which is what we see a lot of because it's relatively cheap to do that, is you have only one transmitting antenna, and you have passive antennas that you put in other locations around the town. And then a voting system takes a vote, which one in a millisecond has the best signal, and that's how they transfer that signal through a phone line to the transmitting antenna, which then transmits it out. a simulcast system, which is really what you need here. And I'd reach out to the two chiefs, the fire chief. Am I incorrect? Do you have a simulcast system in this town?
No, we don't.
Okay. So just for clarification, that's what I was saying that you should have, and you do not have it. And that system is very expensive. It's well over $1 million. But what it does is all of those listening posts are no longer passive listening posts. They're all transmission posts. So when that signal comes in, it doesn't really vote. It goes right to the closest antenna and repeats on all of them at the exact same synchronized millionth of a second. That gives you town-wide coverage. That's the type of radio system you need to work towards. It's called a simulcast system, not a passive voting system. And it is very expensive. You would want to have a company like Motorola come in, and probably even for free, the chief may have already done this, they'll map out your town. They look at your elevations, and they'll tell you where you need to have antennas, in fact, to have 100% coverage. Now, to have 100% coverage on your portable radios for your police and your fire, frankly, it just isn't going to happen, unless you're willing to spend probably a couple $1 million. But if you can get to 95%, then that's something to think about. But it will require a simulcast system to have that kind of coverage. So I wanted to clarify that because a couple of sources now have told me that we got it wrong on that. Additionally, it was said that the department does have full staff meetings. We got that wrong. Very few people show up. We didn't get it wrong. That's not what we said. We said that you have no mandatory department-wide meetings, and you have not in years, and you need to have them. Now, why has the chief not had them? He's explained to me, and I fully appreciate his position. It will cost him thousands of dollars to order everyone to come to a departmental meeting, probably 3 or 4, maybe even more thousand. We think it's necessary to get the department back on track with adequate communication. At no time did I say you haven't had any staff meetings. I said you've had no mandatory. In page 33, I clearly state, recommendation 6, schedule and utilize quarterly underlined mandatory department-wide meetings. If Chief Charette calls a meeting that no one's paid to come to, he'll probably get just what he tells me he gets, 4 or 5 people. That doesn't serve the purpose. You need to have everyone there so that you can effectively communicate your position to them and give them an opportunity to be heard. And then, and only then, when they're out there complaining about something after the meeting, then the chief can take corrective action. Say, hey, listen, I had a mandatory meeting. You were there. You were required to be there. This is where we should have heard it. Now that you're out here saying it, it seems to me you're trying to undermine my ability to run the department. That's why they have to be mandatory. And in order for you to make them mandatory, you legally must pay them. And unfortunately, that will cost money. The other issue is that I said that you should have at least one utility vehicle in the fleet. There seems to be the belief that I indicated certain equipment that would not need to be in there. I don't recall if I said accident reconstruction equipment at the past meeting, but all one needs to do is go back and look at the recommendations. And the recommendations clearly say, under number 11 on page 34, this one police interceptor utility vehicle, this will provide adequate room for raid gear, crime scene processing, and large evidence transport. So we'll see people try to nitpick and say, well, we got it wrong here, we got it wrong there. We don't think we got it wrong anywhere, to be honest with you. We think we've got this pretty well straight. Now, if you believe we've got it wrong somewhere, please feel free to tell us, and we'll absolutely look at and evaluate and tell you if we've got something wrong. But there's often going to be misquotes out there from people on all sides, suggesting that, oh, they did this wrong, they did that wrong. They rushed this. We didn't rush anything. We spent a great deal of time. There were comments in a recent newspaper article in the Worcester Telegram that are, frankly, factually inaccurate. There's no question they're inaccurate. To suggest that we did not talk to the police chief. I met with the police chief, which I told you, which is on your video from the last meeting, 3 times, at length, face to face, as long as he or I wanted to speak. I had at least a dozen phone calls with him as well. So for someone to claim in a newspaper article those things didn't happen is factually inaccurate. Now, those comments also include a claim that we did not speak to the lieutenant. I would ask Mr. Green, retired captain, to come up, and he can discuss that part of that claim, as he was the one that interviewed the lieutenant.
Good evening. I'm glad we're addressing the elephant that's in the room right now. I was kind of shocked after I was given a copy of it earlier this evening to read the comments that were put in the newspaper. But in regards to Lieutenant Woodson, I would state that not only did we communicate by telephone, by email, I received a lengthy 6 or 7 page document from him that responded to questions that I presented to him. And also, the lieutenant, on his own time, on a Sunday evening, came and met with me at the police department, and we spoke about issues facing the police department for over 3 hours. There was a couple other things that were mentioned in there as far as minimally inadequate, a comment that was made by you, Mr. Clark. I recall our first meeting that we had in your office. I know what our direction was. I know what the charge was as far as what you wanted us to do and how you wanted us to present it and how to leave you out of it as far as dealing with the police department, and that's what we did. To say that we didn't sit down with you, I think that was under your direction. And then to say that we didn't speak to either the chief or the lieutenant, I would say that that is totally wrong and false. I don't know if you have any comments, if you want to say you're standing by what you put in the newspaper, if those comments might have been taken wrong by the media and inaccurately reported, now's the time to say it. But I'll stand by the report that we
Yeah,
did.
no, happy to do it. I would say the reporter got it wrong. I fully understand that you talked to the lieutenant, fully understand you talked to the chief. In terms of the direction that you received from me, and it was the three of us in the room,
Yep.
I said what I did not want to have happen is at the end, it is common practice when a management report is done for management to have an opportunity to go through that report and revise and tweak it at the end. I said I wanted to make sure you guys got the factual part right, but I did not want the opportunity to tweak it at the end. I wanted it to go direct to council because ultimately the request for the service came directly from council. And in terms of conversations, did you have a conversation with the treasurer
For what purpose?
for the purposes of making sure payroll was accurate?
Chief Horn followed up on that. The treasurer, I know, on one day when
Because I
he
don't
came
believe
out
you
of-
had a conversation, and I don't
Did
really
I
want
have
to
a
go back,
conversation?
I don't
No,
really
I
want to
didn't.
go back and forth with this, but to my knowledge, there was no conversation with the treasurer, there was no conversation with the accountant within the 90-day cycle in which this work was supposed to be done. And we had two conversations. One, when the contract was awarded, and you guys received direction in terms of signing off on that. And then secondly, how the report was going to be presented. There was no opportunity for fact follow-up, especially in terms of negotiations with myself in putting together a fact pattern. Now, to the best of my knowledge, that's accurate in terms of the three people. The reporter got it wrong because he included the lieutenant and the chief in those comments. He shouldn't have done that. But I'm not responsible for how a reporter's write. I can only do what I can do in terms of say. But that's what he was told, was minimal contact with myself, no contact with the finance director, and no contact with the treasurer.
Of all the questions that I asked of members of the police department in following protocol with the police department, there was no need for me to speak with the treasurer at all. It wasn't part of the charge that I was given to interview. But I did conduct numerous interviews. And I will say tonight before the council, because I will be here to defend myself all night if need be. If, when the union presented their letter of grievance, their letter of concerns to the town manager, if he took the time to sit down and read it, call a meeting with them and the chief, you would not have paid the money to us to do an audit. It could have been handled then. That's something that you should have done, Mr. Clark, not us. As far as the vehicle, I know you took great, you challenged us with that. When people donate money for a specific purpose, such as a canine donation fund, that money should be used for those purposes. We did say that we didn't feel it was criminally wrong, but I'll state here tonight that it's morally wrong and it was ethically wrong. That money, if they needed a new canine car, could have been taken and a brand-new car could have been purchased for that canine officer to operate, instead of getting a used one with mileage on it.
I don't know, Mr. Chairman, if you want me to keep going back and forth. I mean, certainly if I'm going to be held to account, then I'm going to respond, but I don't know essentially the productivity of that. I would say, just I've been the manager here for 5 years, and if one looks back to 2009, what was happening in the fiscal world, I mean, we had the fiscal cliff, We had a lot of financial issues that had to be dealt with, and I had a department that had needs that needed to be addressed. And I haven't heard anything that donations were made for a specific purpose. Those monies were used for that purpose. I think you would even say that that's the case. It wasn't used for any other purpose other than the intended purpose. We're going to disagree in terms of the style and manner in which you guys would like to have seen it done. But I think in 2009, in the light of the fiscal realities of this town, I think it was a very prudent decision to do what we did. And I think the proof is that car, to my knowledge, is still in operation and was done as a cost-effective way. So if you want to have me feel guilty about doing things in a cost-effective, creative Yankee way, you know, that's kind of what I do. I like to be effective at getting things done in a cost-effective way.
I think you can sugarcoat it any way you want in your Yankee effective way, but that money was donated for a specific purpose for canine donations, and that's what the money should have been used for specifically. A brand-new car could have been purchased with that money. And I believe it also indicates in the report that a vehicle, a Chevy Impala, was made purchase for the detective car. I think Chief Horner has gone over it several times that those should be police packages when they're put into a patrol type or enforcement type action, not an administrative package. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilman Marcucci, you all set? I got you.
We still got some house cleaning.
Yes, I'll let Mr. Horn finish up before I.
I got you next.
I'd like to make a comment in between.
Well, right now, he's responding. I'm going in the order here. That's what I'm doing.
I'd like to just echo Mr. Green's position on that and clarify a couple of things. First of all, if the town manager did not make those statements in the newspaper, he should have asked for a retraction and clarification. To my knowledge, none of that has been done. Secondly, we met twice. I met twice with Mr. Clark. Mr. Green met once with him when we were interviewed and hired to do the management audit. During that meeting, Mr. Clark made it very clear to us that he did not want to be involved. Do not bring this report to me, send it directly to the chairman, which frankly I thought was a pretty good idea. So for him now to say that we didn't come meet with him is disingenuous at best. He clearly told both of us he did not want us to send it to him and he wanted to stay out of it. The second meeting I had with him was at my request because of some of the issues that had come to us clearly involved him, and I needed to talk to him. And to say that that meeting didn't go particularly well would probably be an understatement. When I was talking about criticism about the chief, he was fine with that. When I was talking about criticism with the police officers, he was fine with that. As soon as I told him there was some criticism about him, he pretty much...
Point of order, please. Mr. Chair, point of order. Is this a meeting where these people get to come back and slap the town manager and this community on the wrist? Because the last time I looked, you work for us, okay? That's what you, and I'm not asking for your rebuttal. This is a totally inappropriate way to handle this meeting. I feel that we've had all we need to hear from this gentleman and his entourage in terms of this audit, and this council is totally capable of going through this audit without them. This is simply, you know, going back and forth and slapping each other on the wrist. And if it is going to continue, then I'm going to ask to be excused because I have no intention of sitting here and listening to these people come back and just basically whine. So if the tone from this gentleman isn't going to change and the content isn't going to change and Councilor Marcucci isn't going to get to ask her questions, this isn't housekeeping, this is rebuttal. And I'm not going to sit here and listen to this. And I don't think that you know, that whatever money we paid this organization is well spent to have to deal with this. I'm amazed that you're allowing this to continue. Thank you.
We'll be happy to end right there. and
I'm not
take
speaking
whoever's
to you.
question.
Point of order, it's up to the chair.
Councilor Nicola, just on your point of order, I do understand absolutely what you're saying, okay? But this has been going on for a year, We started this process in September. I will say for me, I didn't want to go down this road, okay? Did not want to go down this road, but as I said, and he can agree with me or not agree with me, the town manager, that when there was issues brought up with the police department and concerns, the town manager said he did go and look into the matter, and there was really no problems there. Then we had a letter.
Excuse me.
I have the floor. I have the
Yes,
floor
but
right
this is,
now.
again,
I
this
have
is
the
just,
floor.
this is the same thing. No,
I know it's the same thing, but I'm just explaining. All I'm doing is explaining, okay? Then the police department, the union came out with a letter stating different problems that were going on in the police department. After further review with the town manager and the chief, and we had some meetings on it, it was basically said that there really was no problems. There was no problems. I remember, because I was the chair of PPP, there was no problems, okay? That's what brought some of this council, not all of us, to saying we want an audit, and that's where we are today. I agree. I don't want, my goal is not for mudslinging back and forth. I totally respect that, okay? But when people have to be held accountable for their actions too. And when we make remarks and say there's no problem, and I will say, out of that letter that the police union gave, we responded. We responded last year to, one of the things on the letter was about weapons. We bought them new weapons. One of the things was training. We increased their budget for training because we had to go through the budget process. So we have addressed some of the issues. But what I'm trying to, my point is people said there was no problem. Then if there was no problem, why were we addressing those issues after the fact? And that's where we are today. And I don't
We're
want,
not.
I don't want
I
that.
disagree with you. Respectfully, we are not addressing the problems. We're getting into a pissing contest between this organization and the manager and most likely other people. We do not, with all due respect, need these people here this evening. This council has the document that they have provided, have been paid for, bought and paid for. Now it's our responsibility to go through this document. We don't need these people here a second time. There's nothing new they're going to bring to this, and if there is, it should have been in the document. So my question, or my concern, is sitting here, and the tone that I'm listening to is not appropriate. And you can take a tip, free of charge. Lose the tone. You're going to find a lot of unhappy customers down the road, sir. I've gotten an awful lot of people in this community who did not appreciate your tone the last time, and I don't appreciate it this time. And if it's going to continue, I'm going to excuse myself and leave. There's no point of this. We can have a meeting as a council without them and sit down and read what they've put together. None of us are stupid. There's nothing in here that's a 50-cent word that we can't figure out, and do what we need to do without them. We're done with them. The audit is finished. Why are they here? We should be discussing the audit with the chief, the manager, ourselves, the community. He's done his job. He's not needed here. So if you choose to do this evening with this kind of exchange, I'm not going to be a party to it. That's all I'm saying. That's my point of order. It's out of order. Thank you.
Thank you, and I respect what you just said, but he is here basically because the citizens have an opportunity. How could they answer questions? The citizens have the document now. How could they answer questions when he wasn't here? That's why he's here tonight. He's here.
What questions?
If they have questions, they have every right to ask questions because they are paying for the document.
Okay. Well,
That's why they're here. Now, do I want this
don't
to
see
go
any
back and
people.
forth with everyone? No. I asked, and I said this before, and on both sides, I asked everyone to be respectful for the matter. The town manager did say, and I do respect that, saying that he is going to report back to us, which I was going to say at the end of the meeting anyways, and we're going to branch off to subcommittees. We're that close now. So all I ask is, again, every counselor, I ask Mr. Horn, and everyone respect it. I know this is a hot topic, and nobody up here likes this right now. It's not fun. It's not fun.
It's not necessary.
But we have to deal with it and move forward. So again, I ask everyone, counselor comments.
Thank you. I would have point of order about 15 minutes ago when the interchange was going on, but I decided to wait it out since you asked me to. However, my point of order would have not been as involved. It's simply this. The reason we are out of order is because last meeting, we were told that we are going to have another meeting which the public could have input. It was not a meeting of which we're having right now. This is not public input. This is a back and forth about who said what to who and who did what to whoever. And I, like Councilor Nicola, do not want to waste my time on that back and forth when I was under the impression I was coming here this evening to do my job for the community to weigh in. That is specifically, and we can look at the minutes for it, read the little tape, watch the little tape. Specifically, we were asked to come back so that the public could have public input. And that's not what is going on here. And I, like Councilor Nicola, will not sit here for hours to listen to exchanges of who said what and who put what in the newspaper. That is out of order. The agenda item was for community input based on this audit. And either we start that process, or I have things to do also, and I can watch this at home. So thank you.
And I appreciate your opinion, but I totally disagree. We're elected officials. We are here to answer and help answer for the community, get all the answers. And yes, the citizens have a right to get up afterwards and speak. I set the ground, it was right before he had said, I would respect everyone, that the council has a right to speak first and then the citizens second. So, no, I'm not trying to make this anything bigger than it has to be. But all I'm asking is we can continue moving forward, everyone be respectful. I don't expect a long meeting. And I do expect people are going to disagree on both sides. I do. Yes, it's not going to be all lovey-dovey. But I would respect if everyone respects each other. That's all I'm asking. Thank you.
We're done with the housekeeping. It was simply to clarify on some of that information that we felt was inaccurate. I think the chief wants to speak.
Certainly,
Excuse me.
Chief.
I know we're going through a lot of things. Before the point is lost, I want to make it very clear for everybody out there that I agree with the union 100% on a lot of the issues. I provided 5 years of annual reports to Mr. Horn, and I'm sure he'll agree that I said a lot of the same things they did. The guns we were working on before any letter of concern ever came out. In every annual report and every request I made for budgeting, we need more training money. We need more time. We need more personnel. I just want you to know that. I absolutely saw those problems. I saw those problems 5 years ago. For 7 years, and I believe Councilor Vandal's probably one of the longest running, he knows I've been asking for civilian dispatch. So I just wanted to make it clear to the public and to the union, because they've really been working with us well, that I do agree on many of those points. I realize the fiscal concerns. I respect that. But I want everybody out there to know that, yes, we knew there was issues. We tried working on that to the best of our ability. And I know a lot of the council did too. So I appreciate that. And I know Mr. Horn has said to me, we want to go forward. I believe, and I don't want to put words in anybody's mouth, but in the offices I've been speaking with, we all want to go forward. And I want the people out there to know that. There's a great deal of very good work going on every day. We've made some positive steps. We hope to make more positive steps. And I just don't want this to get, down to a place it shouldn't. So thank you.
Thank you, Chief.
Certainly, we agree with the chief's comments. In fact, in these documents, we have a lot of requests where he's trying to find funding. And in fairness, we understand Mr. Clark's position to hold the line. We have talked to some of the union memberships since our last meeting, and right now, the chief is getting some high marks, very high marks. I met with the chief. I've talked to him a few times. I know he's working on stuff. So when we get to the chief and we move right down through the department, we're very pleased with what has occurred since we've delivered our report. We're very pleased. We're optimistic. We know the chief's working at it. We know the lieutenant's working at it. And we know that the union's working at it. So we're pretty happy with what we've been hearing from everyone.
Thank you.
Yep.
Councilman Moriarty.
I don't know if Councilor Marcucci's done, or not, she's still at the floor as
That
far
was
as I know.
15 minutes ago. I'll yield to you because now my brain's scattered throughout the town of Southbridge.
So I wasn't initially anticipating kind of going down this route, but in response to the chief's last comment, I'm just perplexed at the moment, in that your statement was just that for the last 5 years you've agreed with the union on the issues they've brought forward. Is that correct? At least that's what I thought I just heard.
No, I said I agree with some of the pieces brought forward, and I think we're working on a lot of those. Do I agree with everything? No, but I agree with a lot of them. The reason I said that was respectfully, the chairperson said something about, we said there was no problems, and, I don't want to go back and mince words. I realized there was problems. I said that, and I've got the documentation on and on and on and on from budget requests going all the way back to 2007. Actually, I've got them back before that, but prior to that, we kind of had an even flow of a budget. But boy, when that hit, they talked about money going back to the town. That was one of the concerns. Well, the reason that concern happened is because Mr. Carlisle, my boss, comes to me and says, spending freeze. That's it. You don't spend another penny except payroll. So, I have a boss too. So, see, some of those comments, I know that the rank and file doesn't understand that part of it. I know they don't get that information, so how can you? So those things, we've talked about, but the things about needing the new weapons, needing the training, absolutely, positively. It cost $11,000 to train our department for an 8-hour block. 2 years ago, our training budget got cut to $10,000. We fought like crazy about it, but, we switched over to MPI. We did the online pieces. Do I think it was great? Absolutely not. I agree with him 100%. You're much better doing hands-on. We had to add, I forget, Mr. Clark, $70,000 or so, approximately, that we just added to get where we should be. So in a lot of ways, I think it was kind of like the sequester for the nation. Maybe it's a lousy way to get there, but you know what? We had some concerns. The council's helped us address it. And I just think it's important for the public to know that the positive things are going on. Do we agree with everything? No. Probably won't tomorrow. Maybe next day. I don't know. But we're working through it. That is what I think. And I know I've spoken to the chairman. He wants to see that. We're putting pieces together. We've met about radios. We've met about the technology. We've met about training pieces. We've got all of this going forward. And I think that's where we should be. I know Mr. Horn and I spoke about that. I think every intent, when I've seen these across the state, at any given moment, there's 20 or 30 of these going on. And I've been involved with other departments and see that, and, it's the impetus is supposed to be, okay, let's do something positive. I want to make sure the public knows that's happening, because they are the ones paying us and electing us, and I think it's important that they know that that's happening. So does that answer it?
Yes and no.
I don't think everything's perfect. No. Do I agree with everything? No. But I think we're getting some good work done.
The issue I have at the moment is some of what you say makes complete sense to me. Other parts seem to conflict with my memory from last year, which is greatly possible. I couldn't tell you what I had for lunch today. However, going off what was at least represented or presented at the time as something that you had penned yourself to the Telegram last July, in reference to the union's letter, you open up saying that when you have a few people put out misinformation and attempt to slant other information for their own self-interest, it creates problems, and basically goes on to take each and every one of the five, I believe there were five bullet points, 5 or 6 bullet points that the union letter addressed, and your letter to the Telegram last July of 2012 goes on to refute and rebut each and every one of those. Additionally, to my recollection from a PPP meeting, and I don't want to attribute this to yourself individually, because I do not recall if it was yourself or the manager, but there was a comment that was made that there were quote-unquote lies in that letter, and I remember, again, I don't want to attribute because I don't recall exactly whom, but there was even the comment made that they're sworn officers and they can get into big trouble, serious trouble for making lies or putting out lies.
Counsel, how long ago was that?
This was from July 23rd of 2012, so last year, when that union letter first came out.
Over a year ago, right? We've had our audit, we've had our studies, we've worked through a lot of things. I can dig back, if you want, over years of different council meetings and other minutes and other pieces and get a lot of things that were said, a lot of them. Honestly, I'm to the point, I've got the utmost respect for the council, the community, and the job I do. But I'm not beating things to death. We are where we are today. I hope you can respect that. We've got a police department to run. It's a $3.5 million business with a lot of employees, and we do a lot of important work.
Absolutely.
I think we've all learned. I think we've all gone forward, every one of us. And I think that's what's important. So respectfully, I'm not going to stand here and say what did somebody print about what I said a year ago and how was it said and take it out of context. And I'm not saying you are. It's so easy to take one little piece of one line of one thing and make it sound like something different. And I'm not saying you are. So all I can do for you today, respectfully, is stand here and say, I think we're doing the best we can. Anybody here who's never made a mistake, please stand up. Please. Anybody in their private life, in their public life, with the absolute best of intentions. So I don't really know what else I can tell you. I'm a human being. They're human beings. I can tell you about life-saving awards and a lot of other things. So respectfully, I'm requesting that we go forward.
And I agree with that. I know that
Okay.
the officers I've spoken with have indicated a strong desire that they want to go forward as well, and I agree with that. And I'm not looking to have a lengthy debate by any means, but the only reason I pointed that out was the way I understood what you had said 3 minutes or so ago was, you know, over the last 5 years that you've been in agreement with them, that there were some minor issues you disagreed with. And again, it was just to my recollection, at this time last year, it was full tilt the other way that they were wrong. That was my understanding. Perhaps we're on different
No,
wavelengths there. But
I can only say I've got the documentation that's done and done and done, and over the years, all the pieces I put forward. You know, we disagreed on things like civilian dispatch, but I mean, it doesn't make them wrong, and I don't think it makes me right. It doesn't make me right them wrong. We've got to go forward. We have to go forward, in my estimation, so I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
yes.
Mr. Chairman, I do want to kind of put things into context. I guess the nice thing about being the manager for 5 years is I have a little bit of a track record. You know, I will say, in terms of the union sent a letter at a time in which we were having a labor impasse. We unfortunately are still at that point of labor impasse. I interpreted the letter as being part of the union negotiations. I made a mistake in interpreting it that way. I then followed up after the council. I did initially say to council, I went down, I talked to the chief, we went through this and saw that, you know, in my initial reaction was there's not as many problems as they're saying. In hindsight, and after a meeting with a few folks from the union, which we kind of had a heart-to-heart, I realized that I interpreted that wrong. And what I said is, you know what, I like to think of myself as a person that you don't continue to repeat a mistake. So I had a meeting with the chief and myself, said I was going to interview individual officers. I wanted to get a sense for myself what was going on in the department, and I asked the chief to do the same thing that I did. I've been doing this for 23 years. Sometimes you rest on your laurels. Sometimes you think of things that were in the past that may not be the way they are currently. And I said, I'm going to do a better job and look at that department. I met with several of the individual officers. I met with some of the sergeants about some of the issues that the chief raised. We saw that the issues had validity and had some merit. And as the validity and merit was proven, we took corrective steps to make sure that we did better. I think to the point of this where we are now, you know, it started off in a bad way, and I misinterpreted. you know what, I am human. I mean, I do make mistakes. There's no, I've never sold myself for anything other than doing the best I can do for this community. So I made mistakes. I've tried to fix those mistakes. We've moved forward. I think we're in a much better place now. I think we have a better and stronger department now because we have heard what they said. We heard some of the issues, and there was validity to that. And I think where we're at now, the council wanted to have the audit done. The audit came out. I think the audit has some interesting findings and findings that we will follow up on. And we can have a discussion with the council on that. But I think we're at a point where, let's move on and let's continue with some positive footsteps that I think over the last year. But I admit my knee-jerk reaction was it was a union tactic. I've seen it before, not necessarily here, and I misinterpreted it. And then I informed the council it wasn't as big of a deal, as obviously there were issues. And as I looked into it, I saw that there were, and we worked to resolve those. And, we're still not perfect. We're never going to be perfect. But I think we are making progress, and I appreciate very much the council support that when the police chief put in a request for additional resources for training, I went to some of those trainings myself. There's definitely merit to it, so we did it. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Councilor Manna.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, through you. Mr. Horn made some comments about things getting better in the department. I would like clarification on when the audit is complete. Is his job done? Should he be going back, following up? To my understanding, that would be Mr. Clark's responsibility to go back to the chief and follow up and report to the council. So could you please clarify that for me?
Basically, after tonight, as Mr. Clark said, we are going to branch off into subcommittees after the chief and Mr. Clark gets together. The chief and I did speak on this. Mr. Clark and I did speak briefly on this. And yes, after tonight, the goal is to get to work. Get to work in subcommittees. Are we going to be able to fix everything right away? No. It's going to be work in progress. I will say, and I am going to say it now, I was going to say it at the end, but I know from sitting on the council and past that we've been talking about the civilian dispatch for a long time now. The chief has brought it up and stuff like that, and it always comes down to money and finances and union. So now I'm going to challenge the union. I am going to challenge the union to work with the administrator of that department to see that we move forward with civilian dispatch, because we are one of the many few communities that aren't doing that, and that's the way of the times. So that's my piece. I believe that that's a way of getting professionals right on board on the street right away, and I will support that. And I'm hoping the union works with the chief and can come up with an agreement so we can move forward on that, because that does free up a professional guy that's sitting right behind the desk and put him on the street, which we desperately need. People criticize that we have a lot of police officers, but I will say, and Councilor Vandal's not going to like this, but we have a lot of problems too. We have a lot of problems in this community and who we trying to kid. I had a conversation with the chief the other day. We have basically like 5 sergeants, 6 sergeants to handle domestic and drugs. We're never going to get rid of that problem until we try to figure out a way to come together and move forward. And that's all my intentions are, is yes, to move forward. Chief, am I wrong what I just said? Exact word? Town manager, exact word. So that is my vision. I want to so-called clean up this community. No different than all you guys do.
I totally understand that. My question was when, I can understand why Mr. Horn is here. However, the audit is complete, and it should be up to Mr. Clark to follow up with the police chief and report to us as a council. And I do appreciate your recognizing the problems that we have here in Southbridge. I've said it before, and I'll say it again. We have small inner city problems. When we have 2 shootings within 72 hours. We have drugs, we have fires, we have multiple problems, domestic violence, high pregnancy rate. We have a lot of problems here in town that should be addressed. And I do believe our police department is understaffed, and I do believe that could have contributed to some of these problems right here that were found in the audit. So, thank you very much.
You're welcome. Any other counselors? Any questions? Counselor Carrasco?
Mr. Horn, thank you for being here. I just have you did mention a question, a concern, and I have a question in regards to page 34, number 11. You mentioned that out of the two primary detective vehicles, the two should be replaced immediately.
Yes, yeah, that's our recommendation.
Can you explain to me why should there be?
Sure.
What's
Well,
the deal
yeah,
with them?
neither one of those cars are police-certified vehicles, not calibrated speedometers, they're not a police package, and both of them have high mileage on them. So our recommendation would be that both of those be replaced immediately. Again, easy for us to say, we don't write the check. And at least one of them should be a utility vehicle, because that gives you the ability to carry raid gear, body bunkers, crime scene protection equipment, crime scene processing equipment, and large pieces of evidence.
Now, when you say they're not equipped as police vehicles, so therefore they shouldn't be used at all as police vehicles?
No, I guess I wouldn't say that. But here's what I would tell you. From a legal sense, if you're pursuing someone in one of those vehicles and you crash and you hurt someone or your officer gets hurt, there is no question that you will be called in by a defense attorney on if that was an appropriate vehicle to be in a chase. Was it equipped with pursuit-rated tires, transmission, steering, pursuit-rated braking? Those are things that will expose you to liability that would be preferable not to be exposed to that. Now, there are always situations where you can't avoid that because of some unusual event. But what we're suggesting is when your detectives are out on their, if you will, routine patrol, which is much different than patrol for marked cruisers, they still should have the same type of proper equipment should they engage in some type of pursuit or chase, or even just an emergency response.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions from any of the counselors? Seeing none. Any citizen members have anything? Go ahead.
State my name and all that.
Yes, please.
Hey, Steve Demers, 25 Howell Terrace, Southbridge, Mass.
Thank you.
I had one subject, but a few questions on it. And when we were here on the first meeting, I sat in the audience on the first meeting, and I believe Mr. Horn?
Mr. Horn.
Mr. Horn stood up here and said that he had was waiting on a corner somewhere in town, and he was waiting to go for a ride-along with either an officer or a detective. And at that time, he said that he had seen a drug deal go down. And it really bothered me when he said he seen a drug deal go down while he was standing on the corner waiting for that officer. Now, I believe he's the chief of police in Mendon? Okay. And my question through you is, when he seen that drug deal go down, did he tell anybody about it? Did he tell the ride-along officer that?
That transaction was over the phone, setting up a drug transaction. I did observe that. It was in a business parking lot, and I most certainly did report that immediately to the officer upon his arrival. Could I have taken police action? Yes. Was I there as a police officer? No. But yeah, that was reported immediately to the on-duty sergeant.
Okay, so to the on-duty sergeant, do you remember his name?
I really don't
I've
want
gotta-
to, I don't want to discuss any names here, no.
I'm just
No.
asking if he remembers.
We're not going to use names out there, absolutely
I
not.
wasn't asking for a name, Counsel.
He can say if
Mr.
it's a
Chairman.
sergeant, he can say sergeant or something else, but
I
he's not
just
going to
wanted
use the
to
name.
know if he knew who he was. That's basic. He doesn't have to say his name. I'm just asking if he knows who he was.
Go ahead, Mr. Horn.
Excuse me. Yes, I met with that sergeant for about 2.5 hours after that, so I certainly know who he was. The person had left the scene on foot, so there wasn't any information for me to give him other than what had occurred.
Thank you.
Okay. Now, I'm wondering if it was logged out. He actually, as a police officer, saw the person, knows what was going on, and didn't pursue it. I guess my point being to all you counselors right here, okay, he's a police officer. He's doing a job for the town of Southbridge, number 2, that the taxpayers paid for. And number 3, he didn't do anything about it. He took an oath as a police officer to uphold the law. And it didn't mean just in his town. It means wherever he is. If he sees somebody breaking the law. I have no trust or faith in this man's report because he didn't do his job. And none of you should have any faith in his report as well. You see a drug deal go down in the town that you know has a problem, and you don't solve the problem when you know what the guy looks like. He said he knew what he looked like. He didn't solve the problem. How can you guys put any faith in this report? Because he wasn't honest being on the street under what he took an oath to do, and he isn't being honest with half of this report. I don't believe in policing police. He is a chief of police that's policing other police. You pick the wrong audit company, guys. I'm telling you that right now. You don't see the real problems. You don't see them. Because when you got a guy like this stands on the corner and does nothing about it, when he could have done something about it, and he's a chief, not a patrolman who might think about it because you hired him. He's a chief. Think about it. If I had an employee like that, gone, like that, I think he wants to say something.
Thank you. The previous speaker is incorrect in his assumptions. The oath you take is to your department and to your town. There's no statutory requirement for me to take any action in any other town, and in fact, there's a variety of legal problems with doing that. However, more importantly, when I'm here as your consultant, I'm being paid to be your consultant, not a police officer making an arrest or anything else. Additionally, I was also unarmed. I'm not going to get in the middle of something when unarmed. And lastly, no drug transaction occurred. It was a phone drug transaction to meet and sell the drugs. So he's incorrect on that statement. Lastly, whatever he believes is wrong in this report, I'd ask him to tell us here tonight.
I believe a lot of things are wrong in the report. I believe about asking for cruises is wrong. For 3 or more every year. I can't see that as something that needs to be addressed immediately. I have a business, and we drive cars, and we drive them hard. We drive them hard every single day. I drive a car, I can get 250,000 miles on it. You can go look at it, it's right out there. As long as I change the tires, change the brakes, and change the oil. I swear to you that I drive my cars harder than any police officer in this town. I swear to you. Okay, that's number one. Number two in his report is, it's all okay. The department, we have a good police department, a great police department, he says at one point. And how do you have a good department when you get letters from police officers that are saying, we don't? But the majority of it, we have a good department. I believe you had 29 signatures on that petition out of 36 police officers. Am I correct?
20,
I
it
don't
was like
remember the
20,
exact number. It was a high
28 out of
percentage.
33.
Okay, 28 out of 33. Definitely a problem, right? I mean, doesn't take a rocket scientist to see it. That's about it, guys. I've got a lot more to say, but it's just going to make people angry, and that's not what I want to do. I just wanted to point out that one thing is, you know, if he was any kind of a person, they would have solved that drug problem that night. Okay? You think about it. They'd have solved that drug problem that night. If it was a phone transaction, he knew where the transaction was going to go down. He must have heard it because he heard it was a drug deal. They should have been waiting there. As soon as he got in that police officer's car, he should have talked to him, and they should have been waiting there. That's my opinion, guys. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Demers. Councilman Manna.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you, I'd like to address the concern that Mr. Demers had with the drug transaction. First of all, perhaps with your issue, maybe you should speak with the chief about your concerns. It sounds like you probably could get some things cleared up. But with the drug transaction, well, we don't know what's going on. We don't know if those people are already being watched. We know we have a drug problem in our town. We have detectives. We have narcotic detectives. We don't know if these people were being watched already. I mean, did you call? If you see a drug transaction, something like that you may see suspicious, would you call? I've always believed that there should be something online on the police department or somewhere on there for anonymous tips and whatnot. But to say that nothing was being done about it, I would have to say it could probably be very inaccurate, an inaccurate statement. Like I said, perhaps they were being watched. They were under investigation. They were already reported by somebody else. I've seen drug transactions that I think they're drug transactions. I don't know if they actually are, and I report them to the police. So maybe you could get some of these answers that you're looking for cleared up by the police, the chief of police. And that's all. Thank you.
Yes, go ahead, Mr. Demers.
I wasn't by no means, and I don't want you to take this wrong, saying anything negative about our police department. What I was saying was what he witnessed, okay, not have anything to do with our police officers. I'm saying what he witnessed, I believe, could have been stopped. That's what it comes down to for me. And I hate the drugs in the streets of this town. And yes, I see it every single day. And you know what? My business is in Charlton, and when I drive by that Charlton sign headed into to where my business is, I say, thank God I made it. Because I don't go on Mechanic Street and I don't go on Worcester Street, and I got to go around someplace else. But I was born and raised in this town, and let me tell you, okay, in the last 5 years, this town has gone nowhere but down. Down to hell. And you can tell it's going to hell because it's burning all around you. You don't know what it was 10 years ago. Mike Stevens, trust me, the best chief of police this town ever saw, because he never took anybody's bull. When there was a problem, I was coaching Little League at the time. Actually, I was the president of Little League at the time. We had a gang problem down the Henry Street field. Okay? He made sure that every coach that was down that field, because there was a problem, had a police radio with them. So if anything went on, they were there like that. Okay? I've seen it all in this town. And in 5 years, down. And I'm telling you, and I'm saying down to hell, because it is burning, literally burning all around us. Okay?
Thank you.
Any other citizens? Yes, sir.
Just a comment to the citizens and to the council and Mr. Clark. I have close to 30 years' experience in law enforcement, mainly in Worcester County. I dealt with 60 cities and towns on a regular basis, on a daily basis, for probably 27 of those years. With the 60 cities and towns, I have publicly stated while teaching criminal justice courses for West New England College that Southbridge Police Department is perhaps one of the finest departments in Worcester County. I would rank them in the top 5. I say that sincerely and I say it wholeheartedly. This town has a hard-working department. I've always compared them to towns or cities such as Fitchburg. If I came to Southbridge on a homicide case and I gave a street name or a nickname to an officer, anybody could tell me where he lives, what he's up to, and where I can find him. I've had a great working relationships with this department. They're well respected by the Massachusetts State Police. Lieutenant Tom Zoner is the station commander at the Southbridge Barracks, who works on a regular basis with them. Feel free to contact him and ask for his comments on the department. You got a well-run police department. They had some bumps, and we're getting past them. They're doing what they're supposed to do. They're making the corrections. They're steering the ship in the proper course, and I wholeheartedly give them my biggest support for the job that they do in this department with what they have to work with. And unfortunately, Mr. Fandel, as we all know, money plays a big role in it, and we can't cure it by writing checks for you here tonight. But you do have a very hard-working department. I remember when Chief Charette came on the department, I was working in uniform out of the Southbridge Barracks, and I'm going to guess and say 1982, 83. Okay. Well, Charlton, I know his dad, I know his brother. So, no, you got a great police department. Thank you.
Thank you, and I couldn't agree with you more. We're not going to clean up the problem overnight. It's work in progress, and as I said, when you have a detective bureau of basically 6 people, and sometimes because of short staff, they are now pulled to be patrolmen, it's almost impossible to clean up everything that we have going on there. But maybe that's where a conversation in a subcommittee, trying to come up with a different idea, whether it's inviting the state police in the community even more often, and send that hard message, because it's an ongoing battle that we're trying and we get nowhere. That's the reality of it all. We're a city. We're a small city. That's what it's about, and we have the housing for that city. We're an old mill town that's not a mill town anymore. That's the reality of it, is how are we going to fix it and make it better. So I agree, though. We do have a good police staff, an administrator, and now's the time to branch off in subcommittees, move forward, and hopefully all the councilors are ready for the work that we have ahead of us. And so with the police union, the administrator, the town manager, so I'm looking for this year. I'm sure a lot of it's going to go through Councilor Moriarty, and if not, Councilor Nicola, with dollar values. Any other questions? Councilor Moriarty.
Just a quick thought that kind of popped into my head when Councilor Manna mentioned kind of an online, I guess, tip service or tip line. A week or so ago, a citizen had reached out to me in regards to the audit, because we had mentioned at the August 5th meeting we would put that online. Did that ever end up happening? I'm just through you to the manager.
The audit? I believe we have it online, and it's on the
Okay,
town website.
do you know, through to Ms. Marino, do you know where? I tried at the time looking for it, and I guess my bigger problem is really, and we've discussed this before, and I hope we can have it discussed at some point soon at Gen Gov or elsewhere. The website itself, I went through the home page, town manager page, town council page, town council meeting minutes page, the police department page, because those were the places that, to me, I thought would be the most apt places to see that, and did not. In fact, the town council page, even as of tonight, still has Councilor Regis as a counselor and last year's subcommittees still up, and that's, we're at Labor Day, and that was late June when that changed. So it's off topic as far as the audit goes at this point, I guess, but it's something that we really need to take a hard look at, in particular through your committee, since we don't have councilors forum tonight, and it's kind of spurred me on. The creation of an IT guy, a real IT guy. No offense to Mr. Knoyer, but somebody whose job it is solely to do that, rather than if they have the time to get around to it. Thank you. Or if you know where it is online, that'd be helpful too.
Councilman.
Thank you for you, Mr. Council Moriarty. I found that report online, if memory serves me right, I found it on the home page or under news and announcements. I did find it no problem. I believe it's only like the first page through like 40 or the end of the report.
Right.
The other
Not
stuff.
the ancillary
Yeah,
reports.
yeah, so, but I did find it. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Mr. Horn?
Just some closing comments, and I think the union president is going to ask you to be recognized.
Absolutely.
Again, thank you very much. We appreciate doing the work for you. We stand behind our report 100%. I really want to just recognize the chief's comments tonight, Mr. Clark's comments here a few minutes ago. You do need to move forward. You can go to anyone's department, mine included, and find problems. We are all human. We all make mistakes every day. And so I think that what both of your two primary leaders on this, your town manager and your chief, have said, I think, I hope will echo what the police union will say, is that everyone has to now move forward. In the report, we make a comment, there's a comment in there about burying the hatchet. That's what needs to happen. You got to move forward. And anyone who takes just part of this report will be making a mistake. I said this the other night, I want to say it again. You have to take it as a whole. You don't have to agree with everything in it, but you can't pick and choose. If you like the chief, you can't just say, the only thing I want to talk about is the good things. If I don't like the chief, all I want to talk about is the bad things. You can't do that. It's an injustice to the community. Take the report as a whole. You have a good chief. You have a good lieutenant. You have a good town manager. You appear to have a good council. You've got a good police department. Are there issues? Of course there are. But they're working in that direction. Give them the time and give them the tools, and most importantly, give them the support. And I think you're going to find that you have a great police department. That was our opinion. We think you got a great police department. We've said that from day one. Some people think we're defending the chief. The chief and I have had some pretty heated disagreements in the last 3 months. I still respect him. I still think he's a good chief. We can agree to disagree. You do have a good department. It's not broke. They just got to do some tweaking. I think that's what they're working on. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Horn. Mr. Bailey?
Thank you for the opportunity to speak. I am
Just for the record, could you state your name?
Okay, I didn't know how you, okay, Scott Bailey, I am the president of the police union. And I'd like to take this opportunity to thank first Mr. Horn and his crew for coming out and speaking with us and putting together this report. Whether you agree with it or disagree with it, they were professional, and we appreciate the time that you guys spent with us. I thank the town council for having these meetings and allowing us to, at some point, start moving forward. I want to thank the council, the few councilors that, from the beginning, reached out. And I know I didn't speak to them at the beginning because I wanted this to play out. And at the beginning, I mean way at the beginning. I know we don't want to hash old wounds, but way at the beginning of our letter. So I want to appreciate them. I thank the chief and lieutenant and administration and the police department for listening to us, and we have made great strides. Definitely, I can say that. Yes, we have made great strides, and we definitely want to make sure that we stay that course, and we appreciate them taking a step back and looking at the big picture and realize that through all the mishmash that, that we can work together and we can move forward. The biggest thing that I was waiting for, and I've had discussions with them, and it's almost like a weight off my shoulder. And lastly, I want to say thank you to the town manager for today. For it probably, I would say it took a lot, and I always said that it takes a man to admit their mistakes. And I was upset, and I appreciate your words today, and I want you to know that. And I just thank you, and hopefully we can move forward. Whether we gotta have little meetings or whatnot, we're still always gonna have meetings, and that's the important part of this whole thing was communication. And I think hopefully we fixed those broken lines. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Good evening, Mr. Chairman. Dennis Martinek, 35 Pine Ridge Road. I came down here tonight after viewing the proceedings here. I'm one of the people that called for the audit, that was in support of the audit, and I said if it is something that says there's a problem, we accept it. If it says there's no problem, we accept that too. What embarrasses me, and I'd like to apologize to Mr. Horn, we communicated via email. I never had a chance to speak to you on the phone. What embarrasses me, though, as a citizen of this town, is trying to point the finger at Mr. Horn and deflect from the real issue by saying and inferring that he was privy to a potential drug transaction, and therefore let's minimize the findings that he came up with. The one has nothing to do with the other. Whether you like the chief, whether you don't like the chief, you look at the findings as a whole and you read through them. I will tell you, Sean, that on the site under news and announcements, there is a partial listing of the report up to page 41. I have submitted a FOIA request. I was told it was put out there. I received 49 pages from another source of the report, which is still the incomplete report. There's still a lot of the detail and the attachments that are missing from that. I've also subsequently filed a FOIA report or request more than 10 days ago for the canine information, which I finally received yesterday after telling them that I have contacted the Attorney General because it's not the first time that I've submitted a FOIA request and not received the information on a timely basis. This being after I was told that they had up to 10 business days to get back to me, which they do, but it doesn't mean that you can't do it in 2 business days. When I looked through the report, the one thing, though, that I just wanted to ask Mr. Horn about, because I know there was a comment, I don't have it in front of me, to the effect of the feedback that came from the officers. And I do realize that in any department, whether it's a police department, at a company, you're going to have satisfied and dissatisfied employees. I get that. But when you read through the comment after comment after comment, there seems to be a very minimal amount of support at a high degree, a 7 rating or better, if you will, as opposed to the people that are rating the job performance of the chief as very low. And when you look at that, to me, it's not just a bunch of people whining. I think you've got a very good police department. I am concerned about the way that it's being run. I'm concerned when we have somebody that, and I believe, if I'm wrong, please do correct me, that, you know, we talked about the police chief, I think, in the initial findings, Mr. Horn, as being a non-political position, and yet we have a situation when the town manager's out. Who do we have sitting in sometimes is we have somebody that is from the police department, the chief. So is he political, non-political? You made the recommendation that he stay out of negotiations. I guess I was curious as to why you wouldn't make the recommendation that he also stay out of the political process in town council meetings, other than as somebody providing information and not as an active participant. I also have to say that, you know, although there were a number of things that I didn't agree with, I can deal with that, I can accept that, I take the good with the bad. But the one thing that really disturbed me the most was the whole thing about the canine fund. When companies or individuals give money that's specified for a particular topic that's meant to go towards people that are the canine officers, their cruisers, their animals' welfare, what have you, it's meant for that specific purpose. And to me, it may not be illegal, I'm not a lawyer, but it is absolutely reprehensible, it's immoral, and unethical. We're dealing in a town where we have a town manager who lives one town away, roughly 3 to 4 miles from here. Why we need a town vehicle in the first place is beyond me. Why we had to raid the canine fund is another thing. It makes absolutely no sense to me, but it goes to show to me the lax controls that we have with regards to how we take money from one department to another with reckless disregard to those people that generously gave and probably in the future will not. Thank you very much.
Mr. Horn, I really would like to just move on with this now. It's just going to, we're going to continue. He stated his opinion. I appreciate it. No response. I think we hashed this out. You all set, Councilman? I think it's time to move on now. We already heard enough about the canine. Everyone knows about the canine. We're now going to move on. We're going to branch off. We're going to start doing some work. I expect the chief and the town manager, as he said, to get back to us. It'll be in our packet, and then we're going to start working forward. I appreciate Mr. Bailey's comments, and I do look forward to working with all of you in this upcoming year. With that being said, I'm looking for a motion for adjournment. All in favor? This meeting's adjourned. Thank you.